For a long time, Joe Gould thought he was going blind. This was before he lost his teeth, and years before he lost the history of the world he'd been writing in hundreds of dime store composition notebooks, their black covers mottled like the pelt of a speckled goat, their white pages lined with thin blue veins. "I have created a vital new literary form," he announced. "Unfortunately, my manuscript is not typed." He'd sit and he'd write, and then he'd wrap his black and white notebooks in brown paper, tie them with twine, tuck them under one arm, and tramp through the streets of New York, from Greenwich Village to Harlem. When he stopped, he'd untie his bundle, open a notebook, take out a pen, and begin again. He wore sneakers, a coat that didn't fit, owl's eye glasses, and somebody else's teeth. He was writing the longest book ever written. He smoked and he drank and he listened. He said he was writing down nearly everything anyone ever said to him, especially in Harlem. He wrote until his eyes grew tired. He'd take his glasses off and forget where he'd set them down. How he lost his teeth is another story. He began before the start of the First World War, and didn't stop until after the end of the Second. He never finished. He called what he was writing the oral history of our time. The title, with its ocular O's, looks very like a pair of spectacles. In 1928, he told the poet Marianne Moore, who was editing a chapter of it for The Dial, that he'd come up with a better title. Meo Tempore seems to me intrinsically a good title, Moore wrote back, but not better than the one we have. Joseph Ferdinand Gould is how he signed his name when he was feeling particularly grand. And when he was feeling even grander, he introduced himself as the most important historian of the 20th century. "I believe you would be interested in my work," he wrote to George Sarton, the Harvard historian, in 1931. "I have been writing a history of my own time from oral sources. I use only material from my own experience and observation, and from the direct personal narratives of others. In short, I am trying to record these complex times with the technique of a Herodotus or Froissart." Herodotus wrote his histories in ancient Greece. Jean Froissart wrote his chronicles in medieval Europe. Gould was writing his history, a talking history, in modern America. "My book is very voluminous," he explained to Sarton. "Apart from literary merit, it will have future value as a storehouse of information. I imagine that the most valuable sections will be those which deal with groups that are inarticulate, such as the Negro, the reservation Indian, and the immigrant. It seems to me that the average person is just as much history as the ruler or celebrity, as he illustrates the social forces of heredity and environment. Therefore, I am trying to present lyrical episodes of everyday life. I would like to widen the sphere of history as Walt Whitman did that of poetry."